Whether you keep them in your home or love to see them in theirs, these are the creatures that bring us all together.
Reptiles. We're going to be delving into the experiences of reptile lovers from around the block and around the world. This is the Reptile Talk Podcast.
Boom. What is going on, everybody? This is Jeremy Turgeon from Brassman Reptiles.
And I'm Rob, and I'm keeping it real.
Hey, and we're back after another wonderful hiatus of life.
Hey, just trying to get by.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you've been paying attention to any length of time during our saga of live streams, we're back streaming on Facebook as well as YouTube. Thank goodness we got all of that stuff figured out. So thank you to everybody that is watching and going to come in later. Feel free to share the video. Of course, as always, get the word out. And of course, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Black Box Cages. Go check them out. Link is in the description below. And of course, cycling on that ticker right there, blackboxcages.com. Get yourself a new cage, a new rack, or both. Maybe you need both. I need both. Oh, God. So go check them out, Black Box Cages, and you can use code Reptile Talk to save a little bit off your next order. With that being said, how are you doing, Rob?
I am still alive, if you can believe that.
These are good things.
Yep. I'm we had like a cold snap there for a little bit, and I was very stressed because I have not found my December snake yet. For the people who have been listening along, I try and find a snake every single month of the year, and last year I was able to do it. The first year that I moved here, I missed just December, and so I was like, I've always been like, okay, I got to go first week. I got to get out there. But the first week of December this year was cold as hell. And so
it really was.
Today was actually a little bit better. It was actually up kind of close to the 60s. So I'm hoping that can hold on for another couple days so I can find a DKs or something. I need just one more snake to round out the year of, field herping. So doing a little bit of snake breeding now. I got some stuff that's already locked up.
Yeah.
And then waiting on scrub season to start, which those guys don't really get active and breeding for me until like March, April. So as the other things are getting ready to lay, that's when the scrubs will start breeding. At least for the last couple of years, that's kind of how things have worked. So paired up some Borneos, got the corn snakes down, and gonna bring them up in the spring. So going okay. How about you? How are things going over on your end?
All right. I dig it. Also just trying to survive. This cold snap was brutal.
For real.
Brutal down here. But yeah, things were cool. Things were good. Also breeding snakes. It's we've got a couple of gravid Amazons, which is cool. So we'll have some spring litters of ATBs, which is nice. So you should have some leopards and hopefully some bicolor and bicolor tiger stuff. So fingers crossed.
Hell yeah.
All goes well. We should see those on the ground like late February, mid-March-ish. We'll see. So that's cool. And then preparing to actually go into ATV breeding season in the spring as well. Like most of mine tend to cycle around the time your scrubs are cycling. But I just had a couple of girls that were like, nah, August, time to cycle.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that works. Paired up some Borneos, paired up some carpets, got some ball pythons paired up, and colubrids are down and brumating now. So yeah, things are grooving right along. Outside of that, just playing music and going through day by day. So
heck yeah. Yeah, man. I'm hoping that I get some good babies out of this season, but I'm trying also not to overdo it with the with the production. I'm looking at the different females that I got. Yeah. I guess I got 3 female scrubs that can go this year, so I'll be happy if I get one. So and then Borneos, I got a lot of females that are ready to go, so hopefully I can make something happen.
Did you say holdbacks?
Probably. Yeah, no big deal.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. I dig it. I dig it. Well, I'm super stoked for tonight. We don't talk
Yeah.
about amphibians enough,
Nearly enough.
and that's about to change.
Yes.
So we're gonna bring in our buddy Sam, a frog breeder on Instagram. So we're talking amphibians. We can't switch this
Oh
up.
yeah.
It's we might talk about something else, but I think we're talking frogs. So let's get Sam in
Yeah.
here, and we're this
Hey
what,
guys,
dude.
hello.
Hey, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It's been a rough day breeding frogs, but uh, yeah, I think I'm fine. I'm surviving.
That's the general consensus across the board.
Yeah.
You were just making it through, man.
Yeah. It's like either you amplexus life or life amplexus you. That's all that's going on
Oh
here.
man, I feel like life is hatred.
Oh no,
No,
not Kitrid.
no.
Yeah, people have
Oh.
no idea. So most of the frog keeping hobby and reptile keeping hobby is in developed countries. So ironically, countries like mine in Panama, which are super diverse, has a lot of biodiversity. People don't really appreciate it. There are many reasons for that. We'll probably be discussing some of those, but basically, breeding reptiles or amphibians or almost anything in countries like mine is like in legendary mode because first of all, you don't have like a robust local market. No, people are
Yeah.
like, "What do you do for a living?" I'm like, "I breed frogs," and they are like, "What? You mean like frog legs?" I'm like,
Oh
"No,
no.
I'm like, no, these are ornamental frogs, and
Mhm.
it's crazy because
Mhm.
one of the things I'm focusing right now is like talking to policymakers, and I'm also doing research on this type of things. Is sustainable development for developing countries. Basically, we have this huge amount of resources like pricey frogs. We have Panamanian frogs that are
Mhm.
legally sold in markets, for example, in the U.S., and they are like $1,000, $2,000 each.
Mhm.
And you know, in Panama, people don't know about that. There's a lot of poverty also, especially in
Mhm.
rural areas where all these frogs live. And if people knew about this type of resources and that you could sustainably use them, you wouldn't have from like habitat loss, which is the main reason for biodiversity loss across the globe.
Mhm.
It's not climate change. It's not the illegal trade. It's not. No, it's habitat loss. Animals have less space to live. Why? Because you have like really, poor families that make less than or maybe $1 a day, for example,
Mhm.
in these areas.
Mhm.
And then they have to decide whether they destroy a nice, beautiful patch of primary forest to, grow something they can eat or keep it. Why? Because they don't know how to capitalize that type of resources. And what I'm trying to explain policymakers locally in Panama is that it's not enough to tell people, you have to protect this land or this forest because it's super important. If they are struggling just to survive, and it's having a colorful frog in their yard is not it's not meaningful for them.
Yeah.
You have
Right,
to
right.
perceive that value that you're telling them they have to protect. Once if they can somehow make a living out of protecting the species, then they will see why it's worth protecting it. And yeah, it's tough in countries like Panama because all policies are like not made for people to use these resources. It's completely tough and difficult, and they like in the states, for example, as long as you own a reptile or any pet that's legal in your state, you can breed it and sell it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Panama, you can go to a fish store, buy some guppies, and by law, strictly by law, you can't sell the babies. You know, the guppies are,
Hmm.
you know, giving birth to babies in the
Right.
back of the pet store. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
technically you couldn't. So what this means is you need to apply to all this bunch of permits, and the law requires lawyers, and it takes years. Like, it took me 2 years to sell my first
Wow.
frog while I was breeding them
Really?
and feeding them, having staff. It's
That's
legendary
crazy.
mode. People don't realize the effort it takes to do something like this, and it's amazing because basically you are what you're doing is, you know, in this, and this is true for most of the developing world,
Hmm.
developing countries. What you're doing is you're making it really tough to people first to make a living out of, you know, a sustainable thing you can breed,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and you're opening the door to less sustainable practices like wild caught, whether it be legal or illegal. So
Hmm.
it's a huge challenge. My project, which is called Natural Tanks, is I'm using it also like like a case study, you know, of how you can make uh, funds for research and conservation. That's the whole point of my project. Actually, was, you know, I am a part of the board of directors of EBAC Foundation. We breed the Panamanian golden frog and other endangered
Oh
species
yeah.
of frogs. You know, we have a hard time because in developing countries there are not that many funds, and the institutions are not strong enough to support, you know, and it's a struggle for funding. So at some point I say, you know, I'm entitled to, you know, not spend every single money I get just to try to have these frogs not go extinct. You know, I need a life. I have a daughter, you know, a wife, a
Hmm.
family. So I
Mm.
said, like, okay, I'm going to do conservation and research through commercialization. So that's what I'm trying to do. At least I'm alive.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I try to do is that trying to promote this sustainable use of biological resources, which people in developing countries take for granted.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like those Panamanian golden frogs are like such an iconic species, and people around the world really do, you know, I don't want to say like idolize, but they are like held to like this higher shelf. They have such an iconic look. I see them in zoos and things, and they're so sought after. And to think that like they're losing habitat in some of the only places where they're found, that is the biggest immediate threat for these frogs is that habitat loss.
Yeah, and
And for the people who live there,
not
it's
to
tough,
mention,
you know.
Rob, that we haven't seen one in the wild since 2009.
Wow.
So
That's
all,
crazy.
all those that are left are in captivity, and if projects like EVAC don't secure enough funding to carry on these projects, we could just end up losing Panama's most iconic animal. Uh,
Hmm.
uh,
Right.
and this is a frog. You know, it's been uh, uh, the focus of many like BBC, Nat Geo, and these big media
Hmm.
companies of documentaries, and it's just a bit sad if you think about it that way. So that's why it
Yeah.
shows a different path now, which is I don't think non-profit conservation is the future of conservation anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, back in the
Right.
day, it seems like that was something easier to work around, and maybe there wasn't more funding available, but it was the cost of everything was lower, so people could kind of make it work. And then nowadays, with how expensive just everything in the world has become, there has to be this like financial aspect of it to make sure that it's covering the cost. It's not cheap to run a, you know, even a conservation breeding facility. It's not easy, it's not cheap to do those sort of things.
No,
And for these species, this could be the last line of defense of saving these things from extinction.
Right.
If we don't have people like you who are focused on breeding these things in captivity and propagating them, they could be completely lost because, like you're saying, the politicians, to them, it's just a frog, right? For most of them, it's just a frog. It's just, you know, they go outside, they see colorful frogs all the time, and it's kind of lost on them. I feel like a lot of people in the U.S. kind of have a similar aspect or a similar look where the thing that's in their backyard they don't value as much as something that they see that's from far away and seems exotic, when in reality we've got some really incredible animals right here in our backyard. And trying to get politicians to understand and to protect that sometimes is really tough.
Yeah, and that's where my libertarian side comes. So I am promoting also a change in the pet industry.
Hmm.
Um,
Mhm.
I've explained this several times, but not enough. I think that, and take this from someone that comes from a conservation research nonprofit background first before I decided to start commercially breeding some frogs. I think there is no better ally for conservation than the pet trade, uh, which is you know something that some researchers think it's weird when I start giving them this idea, but then
Hmm.
I'm like, hold on, give me a minute. So
Yeah, just hear me out.
yeah,
Right.
so first of all, um, the pet industry has a lot of issues with researchers and policymakers, and they're always constantly fighting, regulations and bans and all of these type of things. And
Hmm.
this is mostly because species are endangered. And the easiest way to do conservation nowadays is not to fund a project that's trying to save a species. It's just there's a whole bunch of NGOs that what they do is they get funding to promote those types of regulations across the world, and it's a huge
Hmm.
lobby business that's going on. And basically, the result is not saving a species. The result they show to sell their NGOs is just we made this many countries sign these laws, and we made the IUCN sign these regulations and cite this,
Hmm.
and that's all
Right.
they're doing really, and it's not really benefiting anybody because species we keep losing species at unprecedented rates.
Hmm.
So what happens is that the pet trade is an industry that's growing, but it's kind of small, right?
Mhm.
When you look at like food industry, medicine industry, it's pet trade is not that huge, and
Hmm.
it's easy to blame the pet trade for everything. I've been to IUCN assessments on species in Panama, like that when we assess the conservation status of species, and
Hmm.
I mean I've been there. They ask what are the threats of this species, and they pet trade. Oh yes, pet trade. There's absolutely no evidence being presented. There
Hmm.
is the species may not even be in any sale list from any seller in anywhere in the world.
Hmm.
Might not be popular, but every herpetologist there just agrees. Yes, pet trade, pet trade. Why? Because pet trade represents nothing to them. You know, in
Hmm.
general, pet traders do not support researchers, do not support conservation. It's easy to
Mhm.
point the finger at them, and it's just widely recognized as a leading cause. One way to change this is actually supporting researchers and conservationists, because if your research is being supported by this industry, when these things come and they are like pet trade, they're like, hold on a minute, they'll think it twice, because is it really or is it not? I'm not saying that in some cases the pet trade is not responsible of bad stuff, especially the illegal pet trade, but
Hmm.
Mhm.
it's not just if you go through the IUCN list of conservation status, the red list, the database, you'll see pet trade in like almost anything.
Hmm.
Recently, last year, the CITES convention was in Panama, and CITES approved listing all glass frog species, like the entire Central Indian species,
That's
into
crazy.
the CITES 2 appendix.
Hmm.
Every single species. If you read the document that's presenting this, it's a Costa Rican, it was a Costa Rican proposal. The only evidence they have is one Yalinomatrachium valeroy being sold in the Netherlands.
Hmm.
It's a Costa Rican and Panama species, but they were claiming that it came from Costa Rica. One, you're putting hundreds of species in a list because of that. And
Yeah.
it's like negotiation and lobbying, and NGOs just backing that up. There's a bunch of NGOs now adding that to their achievement list. You're
Hmm.
not
Mhm.
going to save a single glass frog just by putting it on a CITES list. Conservation doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You have
Right.
to actually do something for the wild populations. and how many glassworks are really popular or being sold in huge numbers. You know, it's that type of thing. Is what I'm trying to make the world see.
Mhm.
And also, we have to look at the incentives of of
Yeah.
of a nonprofit and of pet trade. In general, obviously, not all nonprofits are like that. I myself am part of one. But the general incentive is it looks something like this: you get funds for your NGO because you're saving this critically endangered species, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the moment that species is no longer critically endangered, whatever funding that represented for your
It's
NGO,
gone.
you're going to lose it because now it's not
Mhm.
important. So, what's really your incentive to remove those species from the red list?
Mhm.
People don't really think about that.
Yeah.
But everyone
That's
is like
true.
an insider. You know, getting a species out of a red list and doing something meaningful is actually an economical decision also for NGOs in a lot of cases. When it comes to
Mhm.
the pet trade, the incentives of getting those species out of the red list is pretty straightforward. The less endangered it is, the less regulations I'll have.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't lose value just because it's not endangered anymore. A species have
Mhm.
value because of morphs, colorations, how rare it's in the hobby, how popular they are, you know, not because it's endangered or not. So,
Yeah.
Right.
those are my two main points for why the pet industry needs to get more directly involved into conservation. Because we're just, as a pet industry, because now I can say we, uh, we're losing a golden opportunity to actually make a positive change for the environment because the
Yeah.
pet trade generates funds commercially, not
Mhm.
asking money to institutions and people and getting these commitments to do stuff. So the pet trade is missing out on that point.
Mhm.
That's if for example you guys love snakes, I've seen all about that. If
Mhm.
you guys manage to start conservation projects with some of your commercial activities with some snakes, doesn't have to even be a snake you guys breed, and
Mhm.
you manage to have like a meaningful, that can be scientifically confirmed impact on those populations. That is a huge win, not only for that species, but for your industry.
Yeah.
And there's so little effort being placed on that type of conservation that's commercially funded. Why? I don't know. I think people just haven't really seen what the advantages are.
Mhm.
Because for me, when I started thinking about starting this project, for me it all came pretty clearly. Okay, so if a species is no longer endangered, there's less regulations, there's less protection, and the species is now saved. Why
Mhm.
are we working towards that? It's because
Mhm.
there is a disconnection between conservationists and researchers and
Yeah.
the pet industry, and that this connection is making life hard for everyone because researchers and conservationists were losing funding opportunities,
Mhm.
and the pet industry is losing, the possibility of helping species and having less regulations because the
Mhm.
species they're dealing with are less endangered. That's the thing, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that it's a really nuanced conversation, and I'm glad that you're speaking out about this because it feels like currently there's such a big separation from conservation, research, commercialization, and it's all everybody's kind of pointing fingers at each other, going, "Oh no, you're the ones that are going to ruin this. You guys are the ones that are going to ruin this." When in reality, if we work together we could actually do better by the individual species, but it requires the academic and research and conservation side to go, okay, look, we understand that in order for these species to be saved, most likely there's going to have to be people in captivity breeding them and reproducing them with the threat of habitat destruction, with the threat of global warming, climate change, and all that sort of stuff. If there is nobody that's actually, if there's no control over um, our ability to keep an eye on the population, it can very easily slip away from us. And the people who research them in the wild and the people who do conservation sometimes are not adapted or don't have the background in breeding that people on the captive side of things and commercial side of things do. And so they've got these people who know tons and tons and tons about their mating habits in the wild, the type of habitat that they like to have. But if you put some of those, critically endangered animals in their care, they're not going to have the eye that some of the people like you are going to have to say, oh, I noticed that when these frogs are doing this one thing, it means that something could be going wrong in a captive setting, because they are so used to just seeing them in the wild underneath the ideal settings of the wild, where captivity is something completely different. And when researchers and conservationists can come to value what the commercial side of things bring, I think that the sky's the limit when it comes to what species can be saved and what we can do for these actual animals. And like you're saying, the funding, if things get taken off of the red list or off of a protected species list, they can lose their funding. So there's no incentive for those people to do more environmental
I mean,
surveys or
not
to
all
put,
projects, some
yeah.
projects, some NGOs really have a definite purpose they follow through, like,
Mhm.
for example, EVAC Foundation. We really want to get
Yeah.
the golden frog out of the list. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
that, but not all NGOs work like that, because
Yeah.
like really big NGOs, they have a lot of staff, it's huge operation, global,
Mhm.
like international. I'm not going to say names, but there's,
Yeah.
they have a lot of bills to pay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Where's the incentive for that? So that's why you can see this. I called it in a podcast I got invited a few months ago. It's McDonald's conservation. Instead of
Yep.
looking, okay, did we save any species? No, but we promoted these policies now. You know,
Mhm.
Right.
it's easier, and that's what they're selling, is that they're promoting policies, and we just keep losing species.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the publicity element of it. Like it looks good,
Mhm.
it sounds good, but
So it keeps me hungry. Yeah,
nothing's happening. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There's two people as I'm listening to you talk, Sam. There's two people that pop into mind on this stuff. One is Ty Park, who we just had on recently, and we were talking about his work with Cyclura, and like he got was it record eye eggs this
Mhm.
year and stuff, and like that's a species that like hasn't been bred successfully in captivity in I don't even remember how many years or decades. And then Forrest Galante, who he's on I think hosts a show on the Discovery Channel, but uh Vanessa over at US Arc did an interview with him, and he was talking about how captive breeding of so many of these different species, like we a lot of times we're that kind of missing link, kind of
Yes.
what you're saying, to bridge that gap, where it's like we see these animals every day. We're under these captive conditions, we might be a little bit more dialed in to how the species is acting and what's going to set them apart to help to repopulate wild populations. And like we can create those assurance colonies and populations so that when the time comes, if those efforts are going to be made, like there's a sustainable population that's consistently being developed in
Mhm.
captivity to kind of help along in those situations as well.
So that's an interesting point. And actually, natural tanks. My team consists of we're three herpetologists. Okay,
Mhm.
so so that means that we're also very focused on doing research. Actually, we have published 3 articles this year. We have one in review, and we have like 3 research going on at the same time
Mhm.
that will be published, all funded by Natural Tanks, the proceedings of the frogs we breed. And one of the things we're doing is we're publishing, for example, captive husbandry and captive breeding guides in peer-reviewed journals, which is where
Oh wow.
herpetologists will go to when they have conservation projects and they need to breed stuff. So
Right.
Mhm.
that's also part of this disconnection. Um, captive breeders have a unique opportunity that field biologists do not have. When
Mhm.
you're in the field, look, especially with rare species, but really with any species, when you're in the field and you're observing a species, what are the chances you'll see a weird, rare, or not known behavior when you're in the
Yeah.
field? But when you have it captive, you know, you're seeing it every day. You have a unique opportunity to observe new behaviors and learn new things of these animals, right? And we managed to observe some behaviors. For example, what we just published was Crusohila sylvia, which is in Panama, it's as rare as a unicorn, basically. We're breeding them, and well, we did a guide on how to breed them. There are people breeding them in the UK, in Europe, in the United States, but there was no peer-reviewed, guide on how to do it. So we published how we were doing it, and we published information of diseases and how we resolved them, and behaviors that we were seeing on the frogs, and we also added ecological data from populations we were checking in the wild, and we found a lot of
Mhm.
new stuff on the species, and that is one of the things that we do. Well, we're working now on a captive husbandry guide of two species, for example, and two of them have never been bred before.
Hmm.
And here's the thing, even if a species is like least concern and not endangered, first, you don't know if tomorrow it will be endangered or
Mhm.
classified as endangered. But secondly, that information that's scientifically published is not just helpful on how to breed that single species, but how to breed a lot of other species that have similar behaviors and requirements.
True.
Mhm.
And the hobbyist and the the pet industry is not using this incredible, amazing tool they have of constant observation. It's like a gift, especially with rare species.
Mhm.
And when you want to start a conservation project in the field,
Mhm.
you need to know what the species requirements are, what the behavior are, what they prefer, what they don't, so that you can actually direct your resources to the right stuff as efficiently as you can to protect the
Right.
species. And that's one of the things we do at Natural Times is publish these things and make it available to scientific communities.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that having that framework is going to help out a lot of people because, like you were saying, even if it's not the exact same species that they're breeding, if they've got something similar in a similar genus or
Oh,
whatever, they
yeah.
can look at this and they can know like there's less stigma coming from a proven like a scientific paper as opposed to listening to even just the commercial sector.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guides in the internet for many species, and there are magazines like Reptiles magazines, for example. They publish guides and all of this. Most herpetologists are not going to read that because
Yeah.
Right.
they look for scientific literature mostly.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's been peer reviewed and not just like anecdotal
Right.
information. And especially in conservation projects that you have like really sensitive species, they're not going to
Hmm.
go like trying something they heard or a breeder told them.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
that's where also the pet trade comes in. Look, I learned to breed frogs in conservation projects,
Mhm.
and the methods that I learned in these projects are mostly not the ones I'm using anymore. Once I started commercially breeding amphibians,
Hmm.
um, for example, my partners in the U.S. Right now is Josh's Frogs, and I visited
Mhm.
them a lot of times, and I've seen a lot of their methods, and I've used a lot of those, and conservation. The point I'm going is the pet industry wants to breed frogs as efficiently as they can, as low
Hmm.
cost, but maintaining the well-being. And conservation projects try to mimic everything they see in the wild and
Hmm.
everything it's published on the ecology and on the behavior of the species. And
Right.
what I've realized now is that there's a lot of unnecessary spending
Hmm.
for species.
Mm.
Like, for example, um, all frogs in most conservation projects use UV lighting, which is kind of expensive. But I'm
Mhm.
not using UV light for anything right now.
Hmm.
Not a single species. I'm breeding a frog with UV light. They do not even diurnal species, and I'm not seeing any adverse effects. My population hasn't gone back, and I'm just following stuff I seen from these uh, uh, um, from the pet industry, and I think a lot of especially amphibian conservation projects may be you know losing a lot of funds on things that are not really necessary. And I would have
Mhm.
never known that if I wouldn't have entered the commercial side. So that's part of that
Right.
disconnection and the disadvantages. So again, I think that the pet trade and conservation and research have the best synergetic effect you can imagine.
Mhm.
I like
Yeah.
at first I couldn't believe it, like why are we missing on all of this? When I
Mhm.
started looking into this.
Yeah. That's so the UV thing is so interesting because so much of the private sector and reptile breeding right now is so focused on now providing UV based on a few studies that have come out recently, especially over in the UK, as it's become like a more typical thing to see over in the UK based on their legal requirements for
Yeah.
maintaining their animals more so
So,
than
so
than
listen, the fact that you don't need UV doesn't mean that they can be some beneficial effects of UV. And
right, of course, right.
also, there probably the species I'm working with right now don't
Hmm.
require it. That doesn't
Hmm.
mean some don't. But what I'm
Right.
saying is, most of the frogs are that I've worked with in conservation or commercially do not require this.
Mhm.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's an interesting thing because that's what I was saying was like a lot of the push now is that everything should have it. Everything's going to benefit from it. So it's interesting that's the direction that a lot of the private sector is going in. But from what you're saying, with what you're seeing, certainly not from everything, is there are certain species that do benefit and do require it or would require it. It's interesting that you're able to see like, well, I did provide it and now I have not, and I'm not seeing any adverse effects. Where
Mhm.
it's largely being argued for a lot of species of reptiles, like if you don't, you will see these adverse effects, or you're going to see other things that you wouldn't have seen specifically because of the UV. So it's just an interesting uh, point to kind of take away of like, it's is it beneficial? Probably for certain species, yes.
Yeah.
Is it necessarily needed by everything? No, and it's not necessarily going to have any adverse effects by having it removed. So that's just an interesting thing that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I guess there are always going to be debates like that, and I'm sure um,
Yeah.
there are frog breeders that choose UV and has different species than I have.
Hmm.
But I was just mentioning, like in my case, and actually, like for example, that Crucihaila captive husbandry guide we published, and we mentioned exactly what we use and what we don't. UV is not in the list.
Mhm.
It's not there.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's two things, Um, I if I find evidence that UV makes my frogs be better in any way, I would definitely use it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right.
When it comes to conservation projects, especially if they're struggling for funding, do they really need it or they don't? Because UV lighting has a lot of costs, including electrical costs.
Right.
That is just one example. There's so many different things I've realized. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, at a certain point, it's a cost benefit analysis, right? Because the cost of the UV lighting, the cost of the space that those lights take up, having to change them out once every 6 to 9 months, especially if you're going everything by the book, that those costs add up really quickly. When we all know that those lights still put out UV light after that 6 to 9 months. It's just that it might have
a lower
degraded a bit
percentage.
over time. Exactly.
Right.
and and when you think about frogs in particular, now when I think about like amphibians and frogs in particular, most of them are not sitting out in direct sunlight hardly ever. If you get anything, it's like tree frogs. Maybe during the daytime they'll be on the side of a tree that may be exposed to sunlight, but like most of these frogs are not just sitting out in the baking sun all day. And so we when we're doing things in a captive setting, you have to take those sort of things into consideration. And like I said, it's a cost benefit analysis. If we are seeing that, we can still get lots of good production, healthy animals exhibiting natural behaviors, and not seeing negative things over time, like not seeing negative reactions over time from not using the UV lights. We have to take into consideration, okay, what is it providing? Is there something that we're just missing? Maybe there's something that we're not measuring that it's affecting that. But when it comes to the important, or like the numbers side of things, if it's not negatively impacting your population, your current and sustained population, and the next generations of population, it's like you're throwing money at something that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
So it's technically a waste of your funds and your resources, and especially when the resources are so tight, you want to think of ways to cut those costs in a way that still lets you do what you're trying to do, right?
So, the story of how I stopped using UV light is because one of the two species I started with breeding is Protoderma brachiops. It's a four-eyed frog.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they're really cute little frogs that they're just super loud. And these frogs, during daytime, they're completely buried under the substrate.
Really?
And like they spend the entire dry season just buried. And they only come
Hmm.
out at night, And I was like having these UV lights, and during daytime, all my frogs were just buried, including juveniles. And I'm like, when are they getting any UV exposure? They come
Yeah.
out at night, there's no any more sun, So I just shut it off. Nothing happened, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started doing that with some of my dart frogs, because I
Mm-hmm.
saw that a lot of commercial breeders, like they would use like beans to grow them, and they would be like even stacked. That's like the
Yep.
common way to do it. It was not the common way for me, because in conservation projects we usually have them like in 10-gallon tanks growing,
Yeah.
Right.
and UV light and everything. So I'm like, okay, yeah, if I want to produce, like 50 of this, I'm gonna need to stack them up, because otherwise I won't
Yeah.
have enough space ever. And they were just not getting enough exposure to UV, and nothing was going on. So then I just completely remove it, and there you go, nothing happened. So that's how I stopped. Maybe other frogs, like for example harlequin toads, Atelopus species,
Yes. Yeah.
they get more exposure to UV because
Mhm.
they are on these streams most of the time. Cloud forest, which is really high and cloudy, but they do get a lot of sun light, and they are most of the times, in the rocks or under the water, over the stream, but they are exposed to UV. So
Mm-hmm.
those I probably wouldn't risk it, uh, but a lot of the species, like you have hole dwelling frogs that live like in tree holes.
Yeah.
And actually, when I go to the field and I know where some are, I can see them every time in their hole. They just come sometime during the day, but there's absolutely no ray of sunlight that gets into that hole during daytime. Absolutely no ray of sunlight. So it's, I think, uh, uh, it's how to the pet industry. My point was the pet industry has all the answers on how to make these C2 conservation projects more efficient, and there's just no connection. Sometimes you get the occasional like we'll donate you equipment and stuff and some money maybe, but there's never like, hey, we might help you reduce your costs and make breeding more efficient and all of it. Never. There's no like a hands-on alliance, and that's a missed opportunity. That's the point. So what I'm trying to do is making conservation research and the pet industry go more hand in hand or collaborate more, because I really want to see that synergetic effect becoming like mainstream in my lifetime. I think we could end up saving a lot more species, than the way we're doing it right now, which we're kind of not working together. We're just kind of like a tug of war, schooling stuff. Yeah, it's I don't like that.
Right. No, 100%, man. 100%. It's I definitely think it's an interesting conversation that needs to be had more. Because
Yeah.
I also think part of that disconnect is I think in the commercial sector, we're not necessarily thinking about the conservation efforts because we're focused on business and like running the business and doing that, and we got to pay
Yeah,
our bills and we
but
got to do that, and
then you have to start fighting these regulations that you think you don't need. So how do
exactly
you,
100%.
it's that's where I'm going.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. No, I think it's a conversation that definitely needs to get brought to the table more, regardless of the species that is being bred. Because exactly to your point, like just because it's not listed as endangered today doesn't mean it won't be tomorrow or next week or something like that. So
or
it's very
just like in the case of the glass frogs last year, just all species placed on a CITES list, which is going to affect your business. Who
right.
knows what? And I'm not saying some species don't deserve to be on that list. Just that when you see like an
Of
entire
course.
family just being placed there, from my, scientific point of view and as a conservationist, I see no. I think it's pointless.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think Rob's out.
I know. Rob is glitching out. His headphones worked. That means his Wi-Fi's got to go.
You can't have both.
Right, exactly. Today, Rob is featured by the spinning white circle of buffering. Oh, let's see. He tried to come back, and we're right back to it. Hey, there we go. Welcome back, Rob.
My stuff just was like,
Yeah.
made it
It's
far.
all good, man. It's all good. So, Sam, how many species of frogs or amphibians are you working with currently?
So currently we're working with around 12 species,
Mhm.
but the thing is, not a lot of people know this. Um, I'm not that much a dart frog fan. My favorite frog,
What?
my
Blasphemy!
favorite, my favorite frogs are tree frogs by far.
Heck
I just
yeah.
think
Okay.
they're the greatest. And for some reason, everybody seems to want dart frogs. So I have a limited space in my facility. It's only 100 meters square. I don't know how many feet those are, but it's
Mhm.
square. It's a meter squares. We usually use that system here, and
Mhm.
we have like 4 species of dart frogs. No, 5 species of dart frogs. But then we end up having like, you know, so many populations of each because
Mm.
there's like this more of this locality, this whatever nonsense. And I just need to have a lot of space. But um, that's why we also work with really rare species.
Mhm.
Like, for example, Agalicnis spurelli or Spurus galiding frog in Panama is super, super uncommon and rare to find. The average herpetologist will not see one in their lifetime. Okay.
That's
So
crazy.
in the last 4 years, we found four, no, I mean, yeah, four. Two from Central Panama population, which is basically the
Wow.
rarest in Panama, and they're also huge. A male is over 90 millimeters. That's like this size of a frog, a male. Like
Jeez.
Costa,
Damn. Yeah.
Costa Rican ones, which are super common in Costa Rica and abundant.
Yeah.
Like the female is smaller than a Central Panama uh, male. Okay.
Wow.
So we found two males of Central Panama, and we found two juveniles of that population that's in Costa Rica, but it's also found in a tiny area in Panama because the
Mhm.
Mm.
population just comes to Panama. So we have found two juveniles and two males in 4 years, and we had
Dang.
one Cruciohyla calcarifer, which also very, very rare to find in the wild in Panama, and it passed away. It was a one we found that seemed to be like regurgitated by a snake or something. Like skin was so broken
Yeah.
and full of scars. And the guy never called, and was kind of weird. But we had it for 2 years. He never was like normal, and we
Mhm.
haven't found another of those ever since. And
Mm.
Dang.
yeah, and that's why I say like 12 species or 13 maybe, because there are some species we haven't been able to work. Like I'm going to show you the coolest frog we have in a moment. But for example, that's the one of the ones I'm more excited to. It's actually not. It lives in trees, but it's not a tree frog. It's a hemiphractidae. It's a marsupial frog. The last time I saw one
Oh,
before I found this one last year was 12 years ago. It's a frog that's nearly
Wow.
extinct. And part of the reason why I want to work with that is because I want to do direct conservation efforts with that species. It's a species that's never been
Mhm.
in the commercial market, at least legally, definitely never ethically or sustainably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a frog you just don't get to see anymore in the wild, you know, and it's amazing. I'll show it in a while. But I thought that would be great for your podcast because it's one of those species people
Yeah.
travel to Panama try to find it. They just
that's
can't find.
crazy.
Yeah. So I need to find a female for that guy. And the thing is that going to the field in Panama is not like in the States where you can just drive a car. And, Panama has a lot of undeveloped zones, especially Caribbean
Yeah.
Versan, Eastern Panama. You need to plan a trip that's days. You need guides. You need to pay boats. You need to walk mountains. You need to take provisions for days. You need to have all these special permits. Um, some areas of Panama, you need uh, what would be like the Ministry of Defense, permission because since we're next to Colombia, we have some guerrilla and drug areas, and
Oh yeah.
go there without a special permission, and sometimes they even like have this like soldier go with you, and
Wow.
it's super complicated. And then you go and you just don't find it. So I'm
And you
not
don't
going to
see them.
Sheesh.
yeah, I'm not going to the field as nearly regularly as I would want to because
Right.
that it's a budget and logistical issue. you
Right.
Yeah.
but but yeah, I there was a time when I had a lot of friends from the US coming to Panama to come helping and help with the conservation projects and build stuff for the frogs and all of this. And when I had these friends, it was not like the golden age of amphibian conservation research in Panama. I started in 2008, and the golden age was like until 2006, when Kittredge
Hmm.
just started. But
Mhm.
now it's like there's not a lot of people because there's usually there's like commercial tours and this type of thing that brings you like bird watchers, and some of them want to go, and sometimes I even guide people on these things, but there's no like a lot of zookeepers coming from zoos and working things out in collaboration. I miss those days, man. Like uh
Yeah.
or yeah, yeah, like um I think that Panama, for example, Panama has over 220 species of snakes.
Wow.
Yeah,
Damn.
I think
I
that
did
was
not know that.
I think that was the last number. There's actually a book. Let me show you that book. I would recommend it for you guys. Um, where is it? I have so many books, dude. Well, it's Julie Ray's Snakes of Panama book. It's the most complete and updated list of species of snakes in Panama. It's from Snake Team. She's an American. She used to live in Panama. She moved back to the States. Pictures are not that great in the book, but the book is overall great. It gives you a lot of information on the species, what they eat, where they're found, and she has like really rare species in there. Um, Panama is the most diverse country in amphibians in Central America. We have more amphibians than Costa Rica. Panama is actually has more diversity than Costa Rica in general. Yet Costa Rica has done a great job on promoting themselves like a research center of Central America and a lot of ecotourism. Panama has not done that. We haven't tapped into that type of sustainable development, and especially because you can bring academics. So, Natural Tanks is also working with the researchers in the states, and
Mhm.
they do research with us, and then we help them get samples and send them samples, and we have all this stuff, and then they have like a lab here where they can do certain type of researcher. So I'm trying to like bring that back to Panama. Um, Panama, for example, we don't have like reptile shows like in the
Mhm.
states. Um, so there's like a lot of stuff I think that people could do in Panama to promote that, and at the same time to get more in touch with the diversity of Panama.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't realize there was quite that much biodiversity in Panama. That's crazy. Crazy to think about.
yeah. When it comes to reptiles, uh, Panama is really good, and you know Panama is right there in the start of Central America. We have, the Caribbean and Pacific versant. You can go from one side to another one in some areas, like in 40 minutes, different time of
Mhm.
time. And you have these two complete, you know, zones with different weather conditions, the Caribbean and the Pacific, and a lot of on areas that have never been explored or sampled to science. So not only there is already a lot of endemic species to Panama and a lot of diversity, but there are many species to be found yet.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
That's yeah, that's insane.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
insane.
People should consider coming and doing herping trips to Panama.
Yeah. It's also wild. I mean, I didn't think about logistically. I mean, like you said, here in the States to go herping is like you just jump in a car and you go wherever. So yeah, I wouldn't have thought that it would have been potentially so intense just to be able to get into a spot to find something or to try to find something, especially when when you've got other geopolitical issues that require extra permits or armed guards or anything
Or
like
just,
that.
or just that it's difficult to access those areas.
Right,
It's
right,
super
for sure.
difficult. Yeah, yeah. Just because
Yeah.
you have to walk a lot, sometimes days and camp. And that. There's no roads, there's no trails, there's no. You have to go with someone that for some reason knows how to get there. You have a road, and then you just get there. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. How did you find out about this?
yeah.
Don't ask. That's funny. But no, that is crazy to me. I was just Rob, I don't know if you heard, but I was saying how it's funny. Like we really often take that for granted here in the States. We can just
Oh
literally
yeah.
just go in a car and go wherever to find whatever we want. So to think about logistically having to think about permits and in certain instances deal with other geopolitical issues that will prevent you or make it that much harder to go, or just the ability to get there in general, like not
Yeah.
really much of a thing that we have to worry about, which is crazy to think about.
I'm gonna
It's
I'm gonna
Yeah.
go and get that frog so you guys can see it. It's a really cool
heck
frog.
yeah,
Yes.
heck yeah. Um, but yeah, man, that's yeah, that's wild. That's
Yeah, there's not
wild.
as many places that you need to like coordinate for herping in the US at least. It's like I think Texas you
Yeah.
need permits to go herping there if you're gonna go road cruising and stuff. And then I think Arizona you might as well. I'm not sure honestly for Arizona. I'm pretty sure in Texas you do though.
Yeah. Yeah, and logistically, I'm sure that's 100 times easier to get than
Oh
than.
man,
Oh, dude.
This is a marsupial
that
horse,
is cool as hell.
Gastrotica cornuta.
Oh
They
wait,
are
hang on. Let
marsupial.
me.
This is a male. Um,
Wow.
so the female has like pouches where they will carry their eggs and they will develop inside her pouches and they'll, just come out like off her back when they are born.
Wow.
That's freaking
Yeah.
wild, dude.
So this guy in particular, it doesn't have big horns.
Hmm.
Some individuals are like that, and I've been taking care of this guy for over a year now, and
That is so
yeah,
cool.
this guy
Dang.
needs a girlfriend. Yeah. So this frog is super endangered. It's critically endangered. Um, you know, there were nights back in 2010 where I would find like 20 in one night, 30 in one night in a stream or close to a stream.
Really?
See them anymore. Yeah. And
That's
they
wild.
really they recently found them again. I think it was in Ecuador. They found one.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow.
they are in Costa Rica. I think they haven't seen one in a while, or maybe they see like a lot fewer than before. I don't really know what Costa Rica are doing. I just know that these guys, are one of the frogs I would like to, you know, help the populations a
Yeah.
lot. They're gorgeous animals. Their life history is amazing. Their natural history, and they, um, I think they don't deserve to go extinct at all.
No, of
Exactly.
course not. That's it's just a wild looking frog.
So
So it's got like these white patches around the lip. It looks like.
yeah, they have these white patches, and sometimes they have white patches on the back. This guy doesn't have them. Um,
Okay.
their call is like when you remove the cork from a champagne bottle. It's like, but it's like super loud, and they will
That's
do like
crazy.
one call and then wait like for 20 minutes. So finding them in the field is hard because you listen to one far
Oof.
away. You need to try to locate it and then wait like 20 minutes or so he calls again so you can try to find it. And then usually they're like really high up on the trees. Um, but
Dang.
yeah, so
Yeah, that's
this
crazy.
Man, that is
so
so cool.
yeah, this is definitely a frog you're not going to find, like in the illegal pet trade, for example, because you just can't find them.
You just can't find it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect also case for the pet trade, because if I can successfully, you know, make this species basically save itself, or at least help it a bit,
Mhm.
recover from doing it through commercialization. I think that's going to make a really strong case, and that's actually what I want to do because I don't know. This is a frog that, first of all, it's not super prolific because they have this like marsupial mode of breeding. That
Mhm.
means they don't lay like hundreds of eggs like all our frogs. Um, so it's not a species I'm looking like I think I'll sell like hundreds of them at
Yeah.
all. Yet I think it's one of those species that a lot of people will understand the value of it, and probably I could generate enough
Mm.
funds to do something meaningful for it. Plus, it's just super cool.
That is just a really cool looking frog, man. Dang.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole of frogs tonight after this. Just start staring at pictures of frogs.
Well, man, there are some really cool frogs out there. I like reptiles. I just like frogs a lot more. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think what I'm seeing now, especially with these non-dart frogs, the ones that are not dart frogs, they're
Mhm.
super underrated, and I just don't understand why. I get the aposematic coloration being cool, but
Right.
It's
like,
incredible.
yeah, this guy's name is Joda. Look at that.
Love it.
Yeah, and
Oh man,
he,
dude.
and he's this is wild caught. Obviously, I have a permit for 8, so I could collect 7 more. They're
Dang.
just tough to find, but this guy's wild caught, and look at him just chilling in my hand. If I
Right.
had a rose, she would eat it from my hand. There are few frogs that can do this. Definitely not a dart frog.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Dang.
and we don't even. It's not like we handle it every day. Not at all. Not at all.
Right.
We
Right.
just leave it be in its cage, and that's it. But
Yeah. So that's it. So you have a permit for up to 8. So with that permit, is that specifically just like 8 field collected individuals?
yeah,
And then
yes.
okay,
So,
cool. So
so
I was going to ask if you needed to have like if you're able to find another one and reproduce it, would you need to have another permit for
no,
a larger
no. So,
quantity?
so I. It's not like the government told me you have to collect only 8. I picked
Mhm.
8. Uh,
Okay.
so my project tries to be as sustainable as possible.
Mhm.
Especially with like ranching. That's like ghost farming, and just wild caught in general type of projects. They will collect like hundreds of species of individuals from a species, and basically decimate the population or significantly reduce it.
Right.
I don't do that. What I do is I collect few individuals, try to make a bigger population in captivity,
Hmm.
and then the genetic pool issue is solved by, instead of collecting 100, I collect like 4 this year, 4 the next year,
I got you.
or
Mhm.
not even the next year, maybe like 2 or 3 years afterwards. You don't need to collect like 100 frogs of any species for any breeding product. Like and that's the type of
Right.
permit you see. So the other thing I'm trying to prove to my government and policymakers is that this can be super sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, I also think
That is really
people
cool.
people who don't know should know that most of the time when you're dealing with a frog, you're not going to get 2 eggs. You're
Yeah.
going to get a lot more eggs out of that.
Yeah. So there's no reason why you have like this commercially breeding permit, and you're asking yearly like for hundreds of wild-caught frogs. Like
Right.
for example, red-eye tree frogs. This year we collected none, even though I had a permit like for 12, because I was like, okay, I don't need to collect any more this year because I have enough populations to work with. But
Mhm.
if I find like an albino or something I think that's valuable for the market, or the trait I just like, it'd be nice to have a permit to collect it. I just collected none
Yeah.
because I didn't find that individual that I thought was worth looking for. If
Right.
there's a year where I feel I need to increase my genetic pool, then I would collect some for that. But it's never going to be like 100 frogs. There's no reason for me to
Yeah.
get 100 wild frogs.
Right.
Yeah. So you can do this really sustainably, and that's part of the things I'm trying to prove. You have to understand Panama is not savvy on breeding or animals in general, and Panama doesn't, as in a policy scale of things, has
Mhm.
never considered this like, oh, an industry that we could really do something about it, despite we having some of the most valuable, pet animals in the world. Like
Yeah.
we have like I have a friend. He's breeding now boa constrictor. He's still not in commercial phase. He's like, the government makes you have this experimental phase, and um, he found a wild boa that he also has a foundation in which he relocates snakes, because we don't have
Mhm.
like a good public service of the government relocating snakes or rescue service. So
Mhm.
he has this, and people usually just kill the snakes in Panama. So he's trying to change this, and he found this baby boa that had this super cool pattern that's like all stripes with
Mhm.
black
Hmm.
and brown stripes and white, and it was just something like, I've never seen a boa like that, and I've seen quite a few of morphs.
Mhm.
People in Panama would just see that in their house and they'll just machete it, and they
Oof.
don't realize that there's an industry. Not only because it's unethical and horrible to kill it, but they don't realize there's an industry that would pay thousands of dollars for that thing. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
If
So
they only knew.
if they
Yeah,
only
right.
knew exactly, and I want people to know that. A lot of conservationists are like, you shouldn't tell people that frog value that much. I'm like, no, they have to know it value that, because otherwise they won't protect it. You know, right. Right now, for example, in the case of Ofaga Vicente, and I made a case study on this,
Mhm.
and presented an American Frog Day. They never gave me the video of my speech. I'm not surprised though. I was
Hmm.
talking about some like Ofaga Vicente from Panama and how they were poached, and I presented, a case study and evidence and why they were poached and whatever. They were paying the locals $1 per frog, and then they were selling it in Europe and the States for over $1,000 each. You know,
Yep.
if that guy knows that it's way more than $1, as worth, he's not going to, and the worst part is they send like little kids with no shoes, that are like really poor kids, to go
Wow.
kill these frogs in primary forests full of vipers, snakes,
Right.
tarantulas, and all these things, and bad plants. And it's like $1 a frog, 50 cents a frog, because they don't know it's worth something. And I think that
Wow.
approach of not telling people there's a pet trade that's going to pay was a mistake. I think they should know that
Mhm.
that has a value, and that there's a legal and sustainable way you can access that value, and make a
Mhm.
Yes.
living making a good thing, and investing in conservation and protecting the species, and all of that. So it's that's what I'm all about now. That's really what I'm trying to do.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Rob, you're hella frozen, just so you know. You've been looking off in the distance for a while.
It hasn't moved like for years.
I brought us all back in, and I was like, "Oh, Rob's staring at the floor." He just stayed
So,
staring at the floor.
do we have a chance for another cool frog?
Yeah, heck yeah, dude. Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah, let's do it. Check out another cool frog. So, of course, I'll have him plug it after. But if you want to check out everything that Sam is doing on Instagram, you can follow him at the Frog Breeder, and of course, that link is in the description of the video. But I think this is a really great topic of conversation. Truly talking about conservation through commercialization. So, if you're enjoying this at all, please make sure you share this out. Let's start having these kind of conversations where the private sector can really have an impact on what's happening on wild populations. All right, what do we got now?
This is the Central Panama Esporelli, or Esporos gliding frog. So look at the size of this.
Ooh,
Wow.
It's huge, and this is the male. The female is a lot bigger. And
dude.
Wow.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, holy crap. Yeah, that's a big frog.
yeah, it is. It's Agalignis sporelli. So this frog right here that I get to work and see every day is basically never seen in the wild in Panama. It's too tough to see. Just
It's
don't.
crazy.
It's not threatened. It's not considered threatened.
Mhm.
They live in the canopy most of the time and only go down to breed.
Oh, wow.
You have to be lucky enough to be there when they're, males calling or breeding, or, so it's just difficult. And the distribution is very fragmented.
Mhm.
So they live like in isolated areas. So this is like one of those frogs that I haven't started breeding because I need the female, for example. Most of the time, the
Right.
female is the issue with these rare species or hard to find species because they don't call and they are just around basically when they're
Right.
breeding. Yeah. Like in the case of, for example, lemur tree frogs that I'm breeding, Panama lemur tree frogs. They're
Mhm.
probably also like the first ethical and sustainable lemur tree frogs from Panama. I collected around 12 tadpoles and grew them for over a
Dang.
year and waited because the impact of collecting tadpoles is a lot less than reproductive adults. Now I'm already
That's true.
breeding those. We have like around 60 or 70 lemur froglets, and we have tadpoles too. I had to grow them for a year. That's not like my government telling me you can only collect tadpoles. That's just the path I chose for that
Right.
species. So my project grows kind of slow. I don't produce like thousands of frogs because I need to keep holdbacks and sell, and it's like a delicate
Mhm.
ratio I need to keep there. But I am working like with really, really difficult stuff to find. It's not just like common stuff. So when people
Right.
tell me like, that dart frog is amazing, I want that dart frog. I'm like, that dart frog is so easy to find. There's like no challenge at all. Why do you like it? I'm honest, and that's why I'm more of a tree frog fan than I am a dart frog because these guys are amazing.
Yeah, that's freaking.
Hell yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah. And yeah, like the Costa Rican male is a lot smaller than this. It's like 30 millimeters smaller than this male.
Wow.
That is such a cool frog.
The
Yeah.
Ecuadorian one, which I think Wikiri has, are
Mhm.
probably similar to this size, but the reports of males in Panama are like 100 millimeters, for example.
Wow.
Dang.
We have the bigger ones.
Dang. Yeah, that's so freaking cool.
Yeah, and tree frogs are like super shield compared to dart frogs. Like I don't think you could have like a frog like this in a glove in your hand, a dart frog, and it would just be there like shielding.
Nah.
Nah, not at all. Not at
This
all.
guy is also wild caught. I've had this guy for like 4 months now. Only.
That's
Dang.
And again, I don't like touch them every day or anything. It seems like you feed them every day and you don't bug them. They kind of chill out and don't see you as a threat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is really cool.
They get used to you being around.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I just love tree frogs.
Damn.
That is
It's
awesome,
so
man.
cool, man.
So do you guys keep any frogs?
I used to when I was a kid. I had a half of a wall in my reptile room that was just frogs, and I did a lot of tree frog stuff. Like I was always I love red-eyed tree frogs, so I just had like a whole crap ton of displays with red-eyed tree frogs. I kept some dart frogs and stuff too, and some clown tree frogs and stuff. And I thought all that stuff was kind of intriguing to me, but I'm more of a snake guy overall these days.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
about
I
you?
don't keep any. I've had white tree frogs before, and I really loved like the crown tree frogs. I think those are really cool.
Okay.
And I really like I know it's the basic answer, but the Dendrobates auratus and the black ones with the green spots that you posted, I really like
Oh,
those.
yeah, that's a morph I found nearly by accident. Like I was looking for
Really?
a really far away place, and I just saw that. So I was with two friends. One of them is journalist. He's not he just goes with me to the field, whatever. And I came back with
Yeah.
that one individual, and I was like, because he was too tired, he didn't want to keep on walking the trail. So I just went into this trail and I found out, and I brought it, and I was like gonna go back and release it. And he's like, dude,
Yep.
you have to breed that thing. It looks super awesome. I'm like,
They are cool.
Yeah. So he went with my other friend to look for some more, and they found like two more, and one was a female.
Oh, cool.
Like they were too tired, but they saw, and they're like they went back and got that for me because I was just
That's
gonna go back.
awesome.
So so we managed to produce 6 only. One
Mhm.
female, I don't know, she only laid eggs like one, like she laid eggs like one that were fertile. And usually happens with wild caught ones. They don't readily breed
Yeah.
in captivity for a couple of months, sometimes more than a year.
Mhm.
But the F1s are now subadults, all of them. Those are the ones you saw in the picture. And I'm
Yeah.
probably I'm going to produce probably like, I don't know, 50, 70 next year of those. And
That's
and
cool.
that's more I had never seen before, because I've seen like the micro spot, which is like green with
Yeah.
small a black spot.
Yeah.
But these are like bluish teal color, super deep teal, minty color kind of, and they have like this side almost like the gastrotica, but like dark and black on the side. Of the mouth. They look amazing. Yeah, those are cool auratus. I got it.
Yes.
Hell yeah. That sounds super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I would breed every single, different auratus I'm finding out
Cool
there,
frog.
I wouldn't have enough
Yeah.
space.
It's so interesting to me because like I just love the auratus. Green and black is my favorite color combination, and so every time I see a different auratus, I'm like, oh man, that thing's incredible. Even just the basic ones, I think they're really cool. And the fruit flies just are too much for me. Just trying to coordinate doing that. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that.
I don't blame you. Actually, I don't keep frogs at home as pet. I keep crested geckos, ball pythons, and some leopard geckos.
Mhm.
I do not keep frogs at home. I would, however, if I could, keep 2 species probably. I would keep bird poop frogs. Sure,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that is my favorite tree frog. Yeah, they're not from
Those are
Panama.
cool
That's why I
frogs.
like them, but I think they're awesome. I would keep them if I could. In Panama, we don't get like those species here being sold. Right now, the only frog seller in Panama locally is me, and I only
Wow.
breed like, local species. And
Yeah.
I would also keep a Pac-Man frog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are like the 2 species. But I'm more of a fish keeper. So I have like a big arowana and reef tank.
Oh heck yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I
I
see.
dig
I love
that.
arowana.
I see frog
Yeah.
more like work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't blame
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. That's very fair. That is
Great.
very fair.
But it's the coolest job I have. It's the coolest job you can have. It's working with frogs.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Dude. Especially crazy, cool, rare ones like that. Sheesh.
Quite a few species I need to try and get next year that are like super tough.
Right.
That's what excites me the most. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And then
dude.
I have like this. Panama has like different populations of red tree frogs that are like super different in sizes, in colors, in markings, in exploration, everything. And,
Really?
yeah. In the States, people that are buying them now from my break are calling them like Panama red tree frogs instead of just red. And I get occasionally people from the States asking me like, hey, I would love your frogs. They look super cool. What's the price? I tell them like this is the price for these numbers, whatever. And they are like, oh, but I can get them from Nicaragua from $7. It's like, dude, I cannot compete with Nicaragua because
Yeah.
frogs. There's enough reports from news media, from journalists, even scientific papers about Nicaragua ghost farmings. I have to actually breed the frog, rear the tadpoles, grow them to an inch, and sell them at about an inch.
Right.
And yeah, and it's crazy. But if you like tree frogs, Jeremy, like red tree frogs, maybe you should give it a try with some Panama red tree frogs because they are so unique. Like they vary. You see, for example, how Esporelli has these white spots, right? So Panama red tree frogs, most of them have white spots, and in different amounts. And not unlike the Costa Rican or Nicaraguan ones, the sites are very variable in coloration, and they tend to be like bigger in size, especially the females. So you could probably have some, And the Panama red tree frogs are not sexually compatible with the Costa Rican Nicaraguan ones. So if you try to breed them, the eggs will be infertile or the
Interesting.
viable. And the same thing happens with different populations in Panama. So I'm actually working on figuring that out. Yes. And some populations, when we try to breed them, so when you're a herpetologist, a common frog like a red tree frog, in the field, just a red tree frog. Once I started breeding them and seeing them every day, I started noticing these differences, from different spots from Panama. So now I just breed them amongst populations that I have, because most populations are super different. You won't get fertile eggs, or sometimes you do get some fertile eggs and some tadpoles, and metamorph come out, and they are like Quasimodos, like they're just not viable. We had like,
it's interesting.
The last time we tried with some like 2 years ago, maybe more, we had out of a clutch of like 60, only 2 tadpoles leave the water, and one of them was missing a leg, like it just never developed a leg, and the other one had like his heart outside. So that's like when we're like,
oh wow.
So that's when we decided like we have to keep track of. Let's keep track of the locality.
Where they're coming from?
Yeah. So what that means is, because I know that reptile morph is super, that the reptile market is super into morphs, and that's another reason why I think tree frogs are cooler than dart frogs, is that there are no morphs of Panamanian red-eyed tree frogs other than wild type.
Yeah.
So
right,
you could like produce some really cool morphs, man. Yeah, they're just not like bubblegum albino. There's not. I've not produced an albino. I've tried, mixing and doing this, but we have this year we produce like, they look like hypomelanistic, or maybe they're like achantic. I don't know. They're growing, and their eyes are like really cool. That's like the first thing we've gotten like that. We have never gotten like any outside wild type. So if you want to get into red-eyed tree frogs again, that's getting a pair of Panama frogs has huge potential, man.
Hell yeah.
Don't get my brain going. Sheesh. My partner's gonna come back from his cruise gig in South America and come back and be like, I saw those frogs on my entire trip. Why the hell are they in the house?
Why didn't you bring some?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm just saying, frogs are cooler than people realize.
I agree.
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Hell yeah, dude. Well, I know that we are a little past. We went a little past. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see where the hell we're at. I just know we're past an hour. But so we're gonna round this out. But Sam, we ask all of our guests a final question before we go, and I think I already know the answer based on what we just talked about.
Okay.
But so that question is, what in the realm? We'll switch it up a little bit. What in the realm of amphibians? Whether it's
There we
something you've
go.
got happening at your place or something that you may have seen online. Either way, what in the world of amphibians has you really excited about amphibians right now?
Do you mean like a species that I like, or what do you mean?
Anything, a species that you like that
Anything.
you
So, like,
saw, or just
yeah, like something that's got you excited about amphibians right now.
So, the thing I'm most excited about amphibians right now is the fact that I believe that, I don't know, maybe within this coming decade, I will uh, find a way to use the pet trade as a way to actually start saving and doing like more research and saving species and doing conservation projects uh, for the first time in Panama. That's honestly what excites me the most. Obviously, yeah,
heck yeah.
working with these like really super cool rare species, um, I would be doing that anyways, even if I didn't have like my frog breeding farm now. But I
Yeah.
think that's the most excited about is that I think that in 10 years from now, I'll be like, yeah, I really managed to create something cool here with frogs. That's it, honestly.
Oh, yeah,
Hell
that's
yeah,
awesome.
dude. I'm here for it.
People would probably expect an answer like, oh, this cool unicorn frog I'll find. No, it's actually not. It's actually doing this conservation research.
Oh,
Hell
yeah.
yeah, man.
I think people will understand. And if people want to follow you, see the things that you're doing, or if they want to donate or that sort of stuff, where should they look you up online?
Well, I have an Instagram account called at the Frog Breeder. You can follow me there. I try to post frog content. Actually, I realized a few days ago I was shadow banned.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
so I got the shadow ban removed. I was like, I'm seeing people posting like a toilet frog, and they get like thousands of views and likes, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm posting like this, like, come on. And I'm like, what's going on? I don't get any likes, whatever. So I went to this website that helped me figure out I was shadow banned because I was at Miami airport like 5 years ago, and I posted the picture of the airport, and I had like hashtag MIA, and that was like a banned hashtag.
Huh.
MIA.
Interesting. What?
Yeah. So I had to remove that post, and automatically I was not shadow banned. So for the last 2 weeks,
Really?
I've been like, posting more content, a bit more constantly, and more cool stuff that I had.
Huh.
Because a lot of people haven't found it, so it would be cool if people follow me and check it out because I really put a lot of effort in what I post. And
Heck.
also, if people want to help me or donate or something, I actually have like a merch store I made. It's like a print on demand, but like most of the design are like really well thought, and you can like really cool designs. People can check that out, and they can order shirts or like backpacks or mugs, coffee mugs, stuff like that, and that would also help me a lot.
Oh yeah.
Heck yeah, man.
Aside
That's
from
awesome,
that,
man.
if you guys want like sustainable rare frogs from Panama, I'm always open to exporting to other countries. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. I hope that this finds the right audience, and I hope that people are enjoyed the conversation tonight. We'd love to have you on again in the future to talk more about some of the stuff that you've got going on. And thank you so much for coming on tonight, man.
No, thank you guys for the invitation. I had a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks so much,
Hell
dude.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.
See you next time.